Webinar underway. Welcome to this Digistore webinar on how to work remotely with media and entertainment workflow. It's a very hot topic at the moment, so we truly hope you get some real value out of this session today. My name is Andrew Mooney and I'm the Managing Director here at Digistore. And I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules to join us today and learn about various technologies to enable remote M&E workflows. Before we kick off, a couple of housekeeping items so we can all get the most out of this webinar. So first of all, Q&A. Throughout the webinar, I'd encourage you to submit questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window on your screen. Just type in your question and at an appropriate time, we'll either answer verbally or we'll type in a reply. Once the questions have been answered, they will be viewable by all participants. If we run out of time for all questions, they are being recorded and we'll get back to you directly after the webinar. Secondly, recording. The webinar is being recorded and a link will be sent to everyone once we've prepared and uploaded the video. So first off, let me quickly introduce Digistore. This year marks Digistore's 30th anniversary. And throughout those 30 years, we've seen lots of changes in technology, as I'm sure you can imagine, and have helped our clients navigate and embrace these new technologies. We cover a wide range of application areas, with our underlying mission being to empower our customers through smarter technology and service solutions. We work with a range of clients from small post facilities to broadcast operations, sporting organisations to corporate clients, from single studios to large collaborative networked enterprises operating across the room or across the globe. In terms of vendors, we work with a wide range of leading vendors, and our close working relationship with these vendors, like some you'll hear about today, means we can deliver real outcomes for our clients by partnering with the best vendors to meet requirements and/or budgets. So moving on to today's webinar, it's all about technologies to enable people to work remotely with their M&E workflows. And we'll discuss a range of popular technologies to enable remote M&E workflows. There are lots and lots of solutions available and we can't cover everything. So we've cherry-picked a little bit, and please contact us for further information on anything that we present today and or to discuss your specific requirements. I'd like to introduce today's technology presenter, our very own Patrick Travancevic. Pat is Digistore's Senior Solutions Architect and has over 20 years experience working with specialised technology solutions, not only in M&E, but also high performance computing, research and education, media and cloud. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Pat to step you through some of the popular technologies to enable remote M&E workflows.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning all. I hope you can all see my screen right now. It's my privilege to bring you this technology workshop for technologies enabling remote workflows. So let's start with the basics on remote access. How do we access our equipment that we already have at our offices or at our workplaces? So to begin, the most basic way of doing remote access is a direct one-to-one connection. In this example here, we have a host location that is running a desktop, and we have a remote user who's wanting to connect to this desktop running in this host location. So how do we do this? What is the most simplest way of doing this today? Well, we'll need some sort of technology to enable a sender to a receiver. And this is typically called a host client scenario. This scenario requires either some software or hardware to enable this. And if we're talking about a direct one-to-one client, it's a relatively easy setup. Things like VPNs or NAT could be used. There are many hardware and software options for this type of solution, and let's go through some of the remote access options that we have. The hot topic at the moment, and no doubt most of you have heard of this, is the Teradici solution. Teradici offers hardware and software solutions for remote desktop access. Teradici does have host and client cards, and it is a reliable and easy way to set up a quick and simple frame accurate video extension or desktop extension. It's very simple, especially if you're talking about a one-to-one. It's a plug-and-play scenario with a host device and a receiving device. But if you do want to connect more than one device, there is some additional setup and license costs for connection brokering, and we'll get into that. One of the great things about Teradici, though, is that it is operating system agnostic, so it pretty much works on any operating system, Mac, Windows, Linux, and others. Teradici also offers software solutions to enable virtualized environments in clouds. This is enabled through Cloud Access Software or Cloud Access Software Plus for those who need GPU support, and is available for Windows and Linux. Fortunately, there's no Mac support for the software version. There is software clients, but there's no host cards. Again, Teradici does support all applications. It's why it's the most predominant solution out there for remote desktop access, especially when we're talking about media entertainment workflows that require color accurate and frame accurate desktop extension. But of course, there are other solutions other than the Teradici, and many of these are software-based solutions. One such solution is the HP solution, which has been around for quite some time now, the HP Z Central RGS as it used to be known. Again, it's a host client scenario. It's all software-based, and it's actually included with HP workstations. So if you have a HP workstation, you already have access to this license. It is also available for non-HP machines, but it does cost. The licenses are available for Windows and Linux. Unfortunately, again, there's no Mac support. It does support most applications like the Teradici. Some applications do require a bit of tuning. There are other options too. One such option is desktop cloud visualization, which is used by some of our vendors, and we'll talk about some of those vendors a bit later on. It's predominantly used in the ArcViz CAD space, but also used in M&E. It's available for Windows and Linux, but unfortunately no Mac support again, and does require a little bit of tuning for some apps because it is a sort of a software-based solution. Another one again is Mechdyne TGX, again used in oil and gas. I have a bit of a HPC background, but we're seeing some of this also being used in ArcViz, M&E, and so forth. Good thing about the Mechdyne TGX solution is that it is available for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And of course, we do have the free options that we probably already use today, things like VNC, RDP, and TeamViewer. These are great, and I use these as sort of backups to some of these other solutions like Teradici's in case they do fail for whatever reasons, but they're not suitable for graphics applications. It's really just for support and maintenance, really, and that's how we predominantly use things like RDP and TeamViewer. Taking a bit of a closer look at Teradici, we talked about needing a host and a receiver or a client. Teradici offers hardware and software options. In the hardware space, we have cards that we can put into our PC workstations that can take 2 or 4 monitor outputs and extend our USB. And for Windows and Linux, we have both hardware and software versions of this host card. So that's important to note. There is no card version for the Mac, even though there is a new Mac Pro. There will be a new Teradici card coming out for that later on. But predominantly speaking, Windows, Linux hardware cards put in. If you have a Mac though, like an iMac or a MacBook Pro or some other desktop device that doesn't allow you to plug in a card, we can look at an external enclosure, which basically contains this card inside this enclosure and extends some cables out, giving you hardware Teradici. How about receiving? What do we do to receive? Teradici has hardware for receiving our signals from our hosts. And these are known as zero clients, again, supporting 2 or 4 monitors. These boxes are basically stateless machines. There's no memory. There's nowhere to be able to store any data. They lose all their information once they're turned off. So they're used for military applications as well. But basically, it implies that you need to bring your own monitor, keyboard, mouse, and tablet. So it's a box on its own, but you bring your own keyboard, mouse, and tablet, and that extends into your Teradici host. If you didn't want to buy the hardware, you could look at a software client, which requires you to have a computer of sorts, some sort of device, either PC, Windows, Mac, or Linux. There is clients for basically every platform, including mobile. but this is only really suitable for virtualized and cloud instances, and we'll talk about what some of those limitations are as we go forwards. Now, we spoke about one-to-one connectivity, and that's being relatively simple, maybe opening a couple of ports in the firewall or setting up a simple VPN to do this direct access. But what happens if we have multiple desktops that we want to extend out to our remote users out here? How do we manage that? Obviously, we could buy a better firewall and VPN setup, which would be costly and expensive, or we could look at an alternative solution, which is called connection brokering. Connection brokering enhances security by not having as many ports open. There's no need for complex VPN setups. It has directory integration, which makes it easier to deploy and manage. And we'll look at two solutions that currently exist for these remote desktop access solutions we've been discussing to date. Cloud Access Manager, which is from Teradici itself, is a perfect solution for those who have CAS licenses, the Cloud Access Software License, which is the software host agents. This is essentially included with that license, so there's no cost there, but there is a cost associated with setting up the Cloud Access Manager, the portal itself, and the connector that's required inside your premise or in the cloud if you want to host it in the cloud. It's suitable for software-based hosts like the CAS and CAS Plus as we discussed, and suitable for hardware and software zero clients, but it's not suitable for Teradici host cards, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that is. But there is a solution from LeoStream. So we mentioned LeoStream just then. Teradici Cloud Access Manager is one way, and it's particularly good if you've got a Teradici solution. But if you've got more than Teradici, say you have a HP RGS or a MacDyne TGX solution, you might want to look at an alternative such as Leo Connection Broker. Leo Connection Broker does also support Teradici and extends beyond what Teradici CAM can do. It does support hardware and software Teradici, which is something that the Teradici CAM simply doesn't do. It only does the software side of things. So this little diagram over here basically is a breakdown of our remote users over here, somewhere out on the internet. We have a gateway which does all our protocol of our sort of, does a protocol for the display and negotiates with the connection broker, giving access to either the software agents or the hardware agents that exist on our remote desktops. Just a quick summary. If you do have Teradici cards and software, what works with what? If you have virtual or cloud instances of using Teradici CAS agents, then you can use Teradici hardware or software zero clients, either brokered through CAM or through LeoStream's connection broker. If you have physical host cards in your Teradici, you can then use LeoStream for connection brokering. You can't, unfortunately, use CAM for that sort of thing. And there is no software to physical host cards in a connection brokering scenario. You can do that one-to-one and sort of a specialized scenario. We can talk about that offline. But what about, we know about our desktops, but what about our video? We want to get some video back, perhaps for some remote viewing or for some remote approval, or just for complementing our remote desktop solutions. We can extend our desktops, but we need to sometimes extend our video. Sometimes that comes in the form of SDI. There's a piece of software, and it's actually open sourced and developed in the Czech Republic by a university, I think, called Satola. I'm not sure if that's pronounced correctly, but it's a little application that can redirect video streams from hardware and software that's on a particular device through IP to a sending or receiving device on the other end. In this example here, we've got a host location that's got it's got a remote user basically producing an output, wanting someone else to review on the other end. You've got UltraGrid running here on this side. It's taking a feed from the SDI out of this Blackmagic deck link here and pushing it over IP with an instance of UltraGrid running here, collecting the IP and converting it to an SDI output for this card out on this broadcast monitor. It has been tested with Arja, Blackmagic, DVS, and many others. So it's a tried and tested solution. In fact, a lot of people with Autodesk Flames are using this solution today for their SDI outputs and broadcast feeds. There is
just a question that's come through. Might be a good time to answer it.
Sure.
Just a question relating to the suggested speeds for frame accurate and whether it's viable over 4G or wide NBN, just in relation to the Teradici and the other options there.
Yes, so we've been doing a number of tests on all those remote desktop access solutions, including Teradici and the bandwidth requirements for those. So I can share those at a later date with others. But to give you an idea, the sweet spot is roughly 20 megabits for a typical desktop, typical sort of 1920 by 1080 desktop or 1920 by 1200 desktop, with a round trip latency of under 75 milliseconds. So that's about 35 milliseconds or less each way. That's sort of been the sweet spot for most of these solutions, around 20 megabits. Now, if you go full screen or if you go multi-monitor, you're going to require a bit more bandwidth. The biggest killer is the latency. So if you're on a mobile, latency may be a bit of an issue if the network is congested. So it's going to be one of those situations where we're going to have to do some more testing to find out if it's really suitable. But it's certainly okay for simple desktops or small workflows that don't have full screen video. You could possibly use the mobile. Okay, any more questions? Should I continue with the IP workflows? IP workflows. There's a lot around this topic, and I'm only going to focus on this sort of upcoming technology. I mean, it's been around for a little while. It's called MDI, developed by NewTek, royalty-free standard effectively for video-compatible IP transmission. It's gone through several iterations so far, originally designed for LANs, for video distribution across LANs and requiring up to 140 megabits for a 1080 60p sort of resolution output, which is visually lossless, but it's now been matured across the years. I think we're up to version 3 or 4 now, which does allow for routable IP and UDP, which gives us more flexibility in terms of WAN and distribution of NDI. Further to that, there was NDI HDX developed for the cloud and wireless sort of workflows, and that's sort of based on the compressed H.264 codec. Note that the NDI spec sort of has a few different flavors, and some people refer to NDI as full NDI, and that's sort of the higher quality, higher bitrate versions that we see in most broadcast equipment. Who produces NDI equipment? Well, obviously NewTek does. They produce a whole host of equipment for video I/O. They have hardware and software NDI solutions, encoders for SDI to NDI, cameras and vision switches. They also have their free set of tools that you can use to enable your workstation to be an NDI device. So you can have outputs out of certain applications like Adobe and Avid, and you can also receive into those applications. There's also a company called Bird Dog, which is an Aussie company, recent company, really hot in the market at the moment, producing broadcast quality hardware based on NDI equipment. So they use the full NDI, not the compressed, and they have a bunch of cameras and encoders to encode your video, SDI video that you might have. Sienna, a long sort of running company that's sort of been associated with baseband distribution, and now with NDI distribution, they have a whole bunch of IP and audio microservices that enable things like signal orchestration and so forth in the cloud with NDI and various other NDI switching microservices that they have. Just to quickly run through some use cases. NDI is obviously great for live productions or remote live productions, video transport for contribution, of course, any kind of IP streaming or end-to-end video solutions. Just looking at a basic use cases here, we've got a camera that's basically pumping out to an SDI NDI wireless device, and then got an NDI compatible computer over here, which basically means the computer running some NDI software. Alternatively, here's like a Bird Dog camera that could be put on a network, say in an auditorium or in a house of worship or even in a concert hall, which has got PTZ camera control, and also can be distributed across a network to any number of receiving devices that could be vision switched or recorded. Similarly, we can have NDI sources coming into our suites, into Adobe or into Avid Media Composer, and we can be dealing with those streams as if they were SDI streams. So let's talk a little bit, is there any questions about NDI before I move on to remote editing? No? Okay. Remote editing. We got some remote editing options for cloud workflows and for proxy-based workflows. If we look at some of the cloud solutions, and if you've attended any Digistore webinars before, you might have heard us talking about Blackbird. Blackbird is a professional video cloud and editing publishing platform. It basically has a microservice running in a cloud, either something like AWS, Azure, or GCP. It also can run on-prem if desired, but it allows for rapid publishing to the web anywhere. It has a rich media portal, but its main claim to fame that it is designed for things like esports, news, and social. So it has a lot of features around automated overlays, pre-rolls, and post-rolls, and it's great for distribution. Looking at an example of how this might work in the cloud, we've got a sandbox that Digistore has as a proof of concept for those who wish to trial this out. But just to give you an example, we may have a field reporter out there capturing something out in the field, maybe with a Editshare, maybe even with an iPhone or an Android device running some sort of Zixi or RTPM streamer up into the cloud, and we capture it with some sort of service. In this case, we've got a Editshare service which redirects our stream to a transcode service in Amazon. We transcode it for various formats, particularly for a format that's compatible with the Blackbird service, which is that microservice I just described. Once that is transcoded, and put into Blackbird, it's immediately available for our remote editors to quickly start editing, top and tailing, and pushing out for quick delivery onto CDNs and other networks. We have this running today. If anyone wants to have a look at proof of concept to trial this out, give us a call. We can arrange that. Another company we haven't spoken about up until now is Editshare, and Editshare has been around for quite some time, is quite prominent in the education space and in the media entertainment space with its tools for remote production and also for production in general. They are famous for their EFS storage, which is the stream guaranteed online storage. But people who are Editshare customers may know that the storage itself actually does come with a nice MAM called Flow, and that Flow MAM is now available as a standalone product for other solutions, other storage solutions that are not Editshare based. So Flow standalone as a MAM is able to index most storage systems. It can be based in the cloud or on-prem. It works on a user subscription model, so you pay per user effectively, and there's a bunch of HTML tools and some apps that you can use that go along with this Flow suite. Flow is a MAM, and anyone who doesn't know what a MAM is it's essentially an asset management system where you can organize all your media and make it available to your users. So what are some of the tools that Editshare Flow has to enable our remote access? We've got Flow Proxy Download, which is a tool that allows us to download our proxies offline from our online storage to be used in our fully featured editors. We can then quickly and easily relink and conform those to our high-res files when we want to send and deliver. It's included with all the Flow licenses. So if you do have Flow and you have Flow users, you'll have access to Flow Proxy Download, so you can access your clips remotely anywhere. So the methodology behind some of these workflows that Editshare has for remote access and remote editing is what they call flow streaming proxy editing, which is basically directly streaming proxies from or streaming your clips from your storage or from your cloud to a web browser or a proxy optimized timeline editor that we'll go into in a few moments. It does allow for edit while capture for most formats, including XDCAM with Flow ingest, and also it effectively enables the real-time collaboration with other users, giving with support for multiple access to the same database at the same time, so for collaboration. Flow Story is one such tool that comes with, or that is available with the Flow product portfolio, and it's a full-featured NLE, having real-time effects, including color DB and all that sorts of things. Works perfectly with the streaming proxy workflow that we just described with Flow, and also works as online media, should you want to do that. If you don't want to use the Flow Story full-fledged editor, you want to use your own editor, such as Premiere Pro or Avid Media Composer, or you may just only want to do simple things, you would use something like Airflow, which is effectively a browser-based application that lets you search your MAM, upload and download your high-res media. So this is important for contributing to the storage and to the projects. You know, obviously you can organize and browse your media and so forth through the Airflow browser, dragging from the browser to your NLE. You can download your proxies if you want to work with proxies, or you can download the high-res files individually or as a batch through your browser to your NLE. As you can see, Airflow kind of sits on top of any of your storage there and provides access to remote users through a proxy-based workflow or even a high-res workflow if that's desired. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew now to talk a little bit about Degero.
Thanks, Pat. Got a couple of questions actually. I'm not sure. I'll run through them.
Yes.
Just one in relation to the NewTek wireless configuration. Do we know whether there's how we would compare that with in terms of delay and or range with the teraDec? I don't think we've done any testing on that, but I'm not sure whether you've got any feedback on that.
Yes, we've done no direct testing with the range. I mean, the whole concept around the wireless is to use the HDX protocol effectively, which is a compressed protocol running at 20 megabits, which meaning it's suitable for most wireless LAN applications. So when we mean wireless, we're talking about Wi-Fi connecting to a network, and that can be as good as your Wi-Fi device really is. They do provide tutorials on that device. I mean, it's considered fairly long range, but we haven't actually done any of those tests in terms of range and performance.
Yep. Okay. A couple of other ones here. There's one here relating to the more around the remote editing with the flow options.
Yes.
For remote editing and media streaming solutions, is there any support for non-broadcast frame rates, e.g. 16, 18, or 24 frames per second? It's another curly one.
Yes, I mean, think of the frame rates and the files as your normal media files. So if your NLE today can handle non-standard frame rates, 16 frames a second, 12 frames a second, whatever for animation, then that you'd expect the same behavior through the Airflow or through the Flow Story proxy workflow. These are your clips as are. So it's really up to the NLE whether or not the NLE supports it. The Flow Story is a full-fledged NLE, and I do dare say it supports all frame rates. That said, you know, using Avid Media Composer or Premiere Pro, you can certainly enable those workflows.
Okay, just one more before we move on. How does the round trip to Avid work if you are editing in a web browser?
Well, that's probably a question for offline because there's a bit of discussion around that. But yes, it's essentially, you know, using your Airflow, dragging your clips to their thing to Media Composer effectively into your bins, and then exporting AFS. That can be relinked later on, but we can take that offline for those customers.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Pat. That was great. I'm just going to talk briefly about Degero and how we are seeing this technology being used to assist in with social distancing and the lockdown that we all experienced. So the title here is Remote Reporting and Field Production from Home. So first of all, a little bit about Degero. They're about delivering reliable connectivity anywhere. So the technology is about the best utilization of available networks. So typically that's cellular networks, but it could also be satellite, Wi-Fi or broadband. So about the best utilization of those networks to deliver connectivity anywhere. And the connectivity we're typically talking about is either live video or IP. So some of the applications that are proving very popular at this time are remote production. So this is where the Degero equipment is used for the delivery of multiple live camera feeds and or switched feeds from a remote locational venue back to a production hub. And the venue and the production hub could be in the same city, they could be in the same state, but they could even be across the country or even across the globe. So quite a lot of options there for remote production. The other one which we're seeing a lot of interest currently is for live streaming. So for professional live streaming, we know that we need a high quality internet connection of sorts in order to stream, in order to do the live streaming. Now, that's not necessarily always available or easily available at some venues. So the Degiro technology can be used to enable remote streaming from any location, as long as there's cellular connection or even satellite connection. So you can pretty much be guaranteed with a portable Degiro equipment that you can stream from any location and set up extremely quickly. Live news is a traditional application for Degiro, and we're seeing more and more demand on that in these times of social distancing. But there's one interesting application that is gaining popularity globally during this pandemic, and that is live broadcasting from home. So, or your garage, from your lounge room or from your garage. And the flexibility of the Degiro equipment enables reporters to broadcast live from remote locations, including the safety of their own home. So there's a couple of images here. This isn't an Australian broadcaster, but we can see a reporter sitting in his lounge room there with a live camera feeding directly back to the station. Now I've got a diagram on this. I do want to step through just to explain this. My laser pointer here. So on the left-hand side here, we have the reporter's house. So this is the remote location, I suppose. And the destination, in this case, it's the broadcast station, but it could be the production hub or basically the receiver of the signal. So what we've got here is the reporter is doing a piece to camera, and the live SDI signal, audio and video, is being transmitted via this Degiro Engo device through available cellular or home internet connections via the internet to the broadcast station, and it's being converted back to SDI through this waypoint device. It's then being incorporated live into the live production, and there's graphics and text being added. Now, at the same time, in this example, a return video feed, which is the composite feed from the station, is being sent back via this device called a Q point via the internet to basically a web browser at the reporter's home location. So now we can see the actual signal that's going to air, complete with text, graphics. So he's able to make sure the framing is correct, and obviously talk to any graphic material that's on screen. The other thing that this diagram is showing too is a teleprompter, or sometimes called auto cue service, is also being fed back via this Q point device. And in this case, it's coming out of the Engo unit and appearing on an iPad or some other prompter. So now you've got the reporter at home. He's able to do a piece live to camera, complete with teleprompter and return video feeds. A couple of things in relation to this. It's the key features, I suppose, is it's extremely high quality video. We're talking broadcast quality video here. It's not sort of consumer grade stuff. Very low latency in both directions. Extremely easy to set up and use. So this is a portable configuration. It can all be controlled remotely, and very, very reliable connectivity by making use of multiple cellular networks or broadband connections. So that's it for Degiro, and I'll throw back to Pat now to take you through the rest of the presentation.
Andrew, we've got a question here.
Yes.
Is Degiro available for purchase only, or is it rental? Is there any rental options?
We do have rental options as well. Yes, there is available for purchase and also rental.
Excellent. Alrighty, I'll continue with the next part. Okay, hopefully my screen's back up there, guys. Okay, well, let's talk about workflow orchestration or automation. These are for the tasks that we I guess, considered menial in some ways, or repetitive. Sometimes this might be a task that a junior might need to do, or a producer, for example. It could be automated using some sort of automation software. We talked about Flow before, and Flow does have some software or a solution for this, and it's called Flow Automation. It's a workflow designer, which is graphically based, as you can see here on the left, on the right-hand side, sorry. Is an example of what the orchestration GUI would look like. And in this example here, we've got an Aspera delivery that we're going to be doing. And what we've got is a watch folder that's basically waiting for files to be dropped in there from a user or from a creative, or for example. As soon as a file is dropped in there, it's taken over and transcoded in some way. We might have various transcode outputs we need for our delivery. It's then sent to Aspera, for example. And if there is a successful send, we'll get a notification and the project will complete. If it fails, we'll get a notification that it has failed and we need to do something about it. It does integrate very nicely with other Editshare products such as QScan. So if you need to do quality checks and quality control, you could quickly develop a workflow to orchestrate that for you. Helps with managing mass transfers and deliveries and things like transcode and extracting metadata into XML formats. And of course, there's notification systems like email. An alternative to Flow, and if you might have Aspera, for example, and you're familiar with Aspera, and a lot of us are in the M&E space because we use it predominantly for file delivery, Aspera does have a software tools for orchestrating workflows as well. Similar to Flow, it's graphically based. As you can see here on the left, we have a workflow basically delivering files and transcoding. It's got a powerful rules engine that's very similar to most of these sort of orchestrators, but the great thing is that it integrates with Aspera Fast, which is the famous protocol for delivering across wide area networks reliably and at maximum bandwidth. Typical applications, obviously, for contribution distribution, for high-speed ingest and uploads that are automated. One of the things that's sort of different, I guess, to Flow here is it does have a bit of a plugin market where you can sort of get pre-packaged plugins of various different actions that you might need to do. Both these solutions do allow you to build your own plugins, so to speak. They could be scripts or external scripts that do additional functionality that's not represented in the plugins or the templates from these orchestrators. Now, finally, I want to talk a little bit about cloud solutions. And this is sort of, again, becoming another hot topic, to use the term again. Many vendors in this space, of course, we have their cloud platform providers like AWS, Azure, GCP, and those. But we have all our M&E vendors who have products or are making products to work in the cloud. Let's look at an example of how we might use the cloud. And the most simple example, I guess, you can think about is a backup and an archive solution. Here we have a site A, primary site, with some production storage and some client workstations that need to be backed up and their projects archived somewhere. Traditionally, we might use something like LTO, or we might use a nearline target, or today we might look at some other alternatives like using the cloud. And in this example, we've got an S3 bucket, which is, I guess, a cheap tier of storage. It's not as cheap as, say, the Glacier tier, which is used for archives, but it is considered a cheap storage, which is good for transactions, for putting objects in and out. So perfect for backup solutions and snapshots. And we can have all our sites, site A, B, Z, snapshot into S3 buckets. We can have them geo-replicated against zones for additional protection and data disaster recovery. And we can use things like Glacier for long-term storage, where it does basically cost you nothing to put into the cloud, but only costs you when you retrieve. So for low transaction requirements, Glacier is a great storage pool to use with your archive solutions. Moving on, another great application for extending out the cloud is auto-scaling, or rendering using scaling into the cloud. In this example here, we have a typical sort of render pipeline where we might have some render farms, a render manager with a repository and some client workstations sending jobs to the render manager. We all know that render farms have a finite amount of capacity, that's basically how many render nodes that we have, and how fast do they go will determine how long it takes for us to achieve our results. Sometimes our workloads might increase and we need to add more render nodes. One way is obviously buying more equipment, which is not always desirable and can take some time. Another way is looking at the cloud. So in this example, we've got a render manager that sits on-prem and delegates render jobs to the render farm, and if required, for the larger jobs, the jobs that need to be rendered more quickly, could scale into the cloud where it would contact a portal, start orchestrating the collection of assets through S3 up into an EFS volume, not to be confused with Editshare's EFS volume. This is basically an FS volume that's easily accessible by things like render nodes. The render manager, orchestrates the provisioning of additional nodes, and nodes are spun up as needed to complete the render jobs that are in the queue. And finally, I just want to mention, I know we've mentioned Editshare before, but Editshare does have a full solution, full editing workflow in the cloud, meaning they have storage and workstations that can enable a full studio to be working in the cloud. And they've partnered with Amazon, as most people have. It could be hosted or virtualized. It doesn't have to be in the cloud, but it could be on-prem if you want to virtualize. You can get workstations that are bundled with it, with support for NVIDIA, GPUs, and CAS licenses for Teradici. And of course, it includes access to all the flow products that we spoke about today. Some of the great use cases for this is, of course, on-demand productions, which productions that basically you need to happen quickly, only go for a short period of time, and then don't happen again for another period of time. Think about reality TV shows, for example, that might need to run a production for 3 to 6 months, but then for the rest of the year they're not working on that production. They could use a solution such as this, where they could easily spin up a studio in the cloud and spin it down when it's not required. There is cost associated with that, of course, and I call it an alternative to renting storage and equipment, because it is cheaper than renting, but it's not effectively cheaper than owning. But it all depends on your total TCOs and your timelines when you're talking about costs there. I'm going to hand it back to Andrew to sort of summarize on the topics that we've covered today. Thank you for your time today, everyone. It's been a pleasure to walk you through these technologies for remote access and remote workflows.
Great, thanks, Pat. That was awesome. Excellent work, and some really, really good options here for our clients to work more effectively from remote locations. Just a quick summary as we wrap this webinar up. We touched on remote access, and Pat talked about enabling remote users to connect to their normal workstations with various technologies. We talked about NDI technology, and that's about delivering delivering video signals over IP. We touched on remote editing, and we talked about 2 different ways to go about that. One was a fully cloud-based editor like Blackbird, and then we looked at various proxy and streaming options with Editshare's flow products. We looked at Degero and enabling remote connectivity anywhere, and applications like remote production and live broadcasting from home. We then touched on workflow automation and automating workflow with products like Aspera's Orchestrator and Editshare's Flow Automation. And then finally, Pat took us through a couple of examples about how we can use the cloud, and also that we're now seeing some complete turnkey facilities available to be spun up in the cloud, and I think we're going to see a little bit more than that. I have one more question here that we might be able to answer, Pat, if you're still with us.
Yes, I'm here.
Yep, okay. It's from Nick, and he's asking, he mostly edits documentaries for TV. Which of these technologies will directly replicate an edit suite experience when the editor and the director are in remote locations? So there's probably a couple of different ways we can look at that. Obviously, with the remote workstations, and the Teradicis would cater for that, and I think the Editshare workflows would also cater for that.
That's right. I mean, pretty much most of these technologies would enable that kind of workflow. It's just predominantly why we're doing this webinar, to sort of share what we have in terms of solutions and technologies that could enable this. We could certainly talk to Mick directly to get some more of his details and clarify his requirements to sort of position him more correctly.
Yeah, it probably requires a little bit more conversation on that one. There's a couple of others there which we can follow up offline. Can you just jump to the next slide? Yeah, final slide. So I just really wanted to thank everyone for your time today, and I really hope that this was time well spent for everyone. We've got a lot of people on the webinar today, so it's obviously a very challenging time for people, and it's a very, very hot topic. So please reach out to us. You know, during this short presentation, you know, we can't answer all questions or address application areas specific to everyone. So I would encourage you to contact your Digistore account manager or Digistore generally so that we can help you further. The inquiries email and the inquiry form on the website are probably the best general contact options at the moment in the current environment. It is business as usual here still at Digistore. Most of our team are working remotely. We do have the office manned each day, and of course the online store is fully operational. So once again, thanks very much. Please make contact. We're here to help us all get through this. Thank you very much, and we'll close the webinar off now.